You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SIBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SIBO, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SIBO's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again, back from the old weekend, back to kick off our broadcast week here on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Welcome to all of you joining us here to kick off your trading week as well. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the ever scintillating, ever engaging, at least we think so around here, and again, not biased at all, OptionsInsider.com. Threw you a loop there over there. Check it out if you haven't been to the website in a while. A lot of great stuff there. A lot of unusual activity, which is always fun. Of course, it's earnings season kicking into high gear now, so we're going to have a lot more updated earnings move results, and earnings season reports for you over there, courtesy of our friends over there in Orat's land. And, of course, links to every freaking show ever done in the history of time, listeners, which is a lot. Thousands of episodes of shows. And then, of course, if you want even more in your lives, and who can blame you out there? We want engaging stuff coming at you. Exclusive stuff every week, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Get to win fun things. You get to listen to live stuff. You get to heckle all of our guests. And, of course, ask questions, some of the best minds in the world of options and derivatives. And all sorts of fun. Theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the old OB kickoff show today. First, let's go out to the quiet and sleepy Hamlet. Nothing ever happens there except a lot of delicious gyro and lemonade eating. It is, of course, St. Charles, where we are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW. Mr. Uncle Mike, how many gyros and or Italian lemonades did you have this weekend?
I did not have any, so I need to go out, get out to Skippy's, huh?
I think you need to turn in your St. Charles residency card. Clearly, you are not living up to the requirements, sir. At least 2 a day is required, I believe, for all St. Charles residents.
What's ironic, though, is the Skippies that I go to is in South Elgin, though. I don't go to the. I live closer to the one in South Elgin. Is that okay?
I don't know if that's allowed. See, I don't know the lines of demarcation. I've been to the one in St. Charles, I think, but I don't know. I don't know where the lines are all blurry out there in the hinterlands. You know, it's a lot of farmland. You don't know where you're crossing one person's farm into the next farm. Now you're in another town. It's crazy. It's crazy.
We all love each other. That's why it's the sunny, scenic, tranquil hamlet with which it is.
Scenic and tranquil as well. And now we go out, a little bit of a curveball, listeners. We're going out to the dark and stormy shores of Maine. Nothing's scenic, nothing's tranquil, and to the top of that dark tower that dots the shores and is always scanning for the clam pirates. We are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, a.k.a. the maestro of all things 80s wrestling, the rock lobster himself, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi. Mr. Rock Lobster, did you have time to at least quickly scan a Wikipedia for names of 80s wrestlers?
Sadly, I did not. Sebastian, let's see. He told me about this gig about 9 minutes ago.
Plenty of time to familiarize yourself with the top names. So, I'm going to call an audible just for fun because it's no fair to throw the Rock Lobster under the bus. I will say this. In keeping with the theme of the 80s, I did this weekend see a seminal film. Seminal in air quotes, listeners. Because I know the meatball has been going on. He actually I blame him for this. He kind of got me a little bit excited because he was going on and on Twitter about how he was he maybe going to be excited for the new Transformers movie after all the other ones were pretty much dumpster fires. And I was in the same boat. I had already written them all off. But he seemed like he was kind of getting a little hyped up for this one. So he was starting to lure me to the dark side a little bit. I was like, no, I can't. These movies are terrible. And so we finally watched it this weekend. And my short, no spoiler review, it's marginally better than the other ones, listeners. So if you like that, it's not as bad as the train wreck of Bay films we've seen before. But if you really like Transformers, it's still not a good movie. But it has moments, it has elements in there. And so, Mr. Uncle Mike, in the depths of my research, and keeping to our 80s wrestling theme, I did uncover there was a brief crossover in the late 80s, 89, between Transformers and WWF. Sir, are you familiar with this?
I am not. Do tell.
All right, this is going to be a hard one. I figured no one's going to get points on this one. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, you're kind of in the same boat as Uncle Mike, I think, on this one. But there was a crossover. It actually wasn't in the TV show, which most people are familiar with for Transformers. It was in the Marvel comic books, which did run for a long time and were going heavily in the 80s. I remember reading some of these, but I wasn't hardcore into the Marvel Transformers comic books, at least. And there was a crossover. Apparently, a bunch of the Marvel writers went to a wrestling show and fell in love with it, so they decided to cross it over with the Transformers book. And so there was, I won't say the names of, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you one, because I had never heard of this Transformer. The Transformer named Road Handler goes on to wrestle for the Interplanetary Wrestling Championship of the Universe against a human. And he discovers he got challenged by this human who is a pro wrestler. And he discovers by wrestling with him that, spoiler alert, pro wrestling is fake. And it blew his mind. He thought it was real. But anyway, the wrestler that he wrestles, Mr. Uncle Mike, and Mr. Rock Lobster, you can take a try too as well, is clearly inspired, let's just say, by a very famous 80s wrestling heel. Dare I say it, one of the top heels out there. So the name is very similar and clearly inspired by the fact the first name is the same as this person. So I will let the Rock Lobster go first in the spirit of fairness. Mr. Rock Lobster, just name a famous 80s wrestling bad guy if you can, sir.
Oh, the only guy I can think of is like the Undertaker, but I knew there was.
He's not really.
That's not right.
Not really a bad guy. He had moments, I guess, and also he was kind of fringe '80s. I think he debuted in like 1990, technically. So kind of doesn't really fit our criteria.
Damn. Yeah,
you can take another swing if you like, because I'm nice.
I wish I could think of something. I'm just terrible.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, this heel that he is clearly named after. Let's say he was popular. They had a problem with him in WWF because he was supposed to be a sniveling heel, and yet the fans kind of liked him. He was became a kind of a popular character, and he had. I'll even throw an extra clue for you. He came to the ring with, let's say, an interesting gimmick. That's all I'm going to say.
Gosh, I am. I mean,
A gimmick in a bag, hint, hint.
Oh, Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yes, Jake the Snake Roberts. I'll give you a half a point for that because I kind of had to help you. But yes, this name of the wrestler that the Transformer wrestled was Jake the Jackhammer Jackson. And clearly inspired by Jake. So there you go. There actually was an 80s wrestling / Transformers crossover. You didn't think I could get there, listeners, but I did. That's the depths we go to for you folks here on the show, listeners, to deliver on our gimmick as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading. And part of the reason we could spend our beginning of our show on that kind of silly nonsense because there's not much going on again today. We got S&P up about 1/3%. You're talking 13 handles or so. The Dow up about 1/4%. NASDAQ looking a little bit more robust, up nearly 0.75%. So apparently Elizabeth Warren's threats to Tesla and Twitter out there have no bearing on the market out there today. We have China, of course, people talking, I should say, about China's GDP. So there are some things going on overseas, of course. Ever increasing saber rattling out of Russia. So there are some things out there, but you'd never know it by looking at the, once again, general drift up that we are seeing in the markets. VIX, when we kicked off the show, listeners, literally unched from where it was on the Thursday show. 13 double yet again. You don't see that very often. VVIX 94, so giving up a little bit of its luster. Down about 0.3 of a point. VXX 2360 down about 0.15, so getting a little bit of juice off the top, but not a ton. Remember we were saying on vol views this week, listeners, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a robust time for a lot of downside in these over the next week and change as we figure out what's going on with this whole NASDAQ rebalance thing. UVXY 1690 down about 1/3 of a point. SVIX 29.5 back up 0.5 point, so wherever he is, Mr. Dr. Vix is excited again. UVIX 390 down 1/10 of a point, so again, kind of treading water. And Vol Q 17 3/4 when we commenced operations, literally unched yet again from the Thursday show. So the major vol indices we're looking at are literally unched on the week, which is kind of emblematic of where we are right now in the markets. Mr. Uncle Mike, as our quote-unquote winner, if you have any enduring memories of that intersection of 80s pop culture known as Transformers and or pro wrestling, B, have you seen the new Transformers movie, sir? Do you have any thoughts on that? Have at it. And then C, what's catching your eye in the market, sir?
Well, I actually didn't even know that existed, so I appreciate the education today on the fact that the Transformers and Jake the Snake kind of had a thing going. So
we go deep here on the network for you, sir.
Yeah, that's about as you're not going to get much deeper than Jake the Snake and the Transformers, that's for sure. So definite appreciation for the deep cut that you had today. And I've not seen the new movie yet, but terms of the marketplace, it's like we're climbing, not necessarily the wall of worry, but I think it's the wall of anticipation in that with earnings season in the coming around, I think there's people that want to be a part of this market, but not a lot of people that want to rally it just yet. So I think that's kind of what's happening at this stage. What's interesting now is that with inflation, now that the inflation numbers are all down right now by comparison to where they were 6 months to a year ago, are we going to start pausing or are we going to start lowering rates now? And I'm not sure if we're going to be lowering rates because then the Fed would look stupid because even though they say that they're data dependent, they are also career dependent and they don't want to look silly. But on the flip side, do we really want to have interest rates this high if inflation's not going to be that high? And I think it'll be interesting to see what the Fed does in the coming weeks. Now, with other things that are happening right now, we've had a little bit of a rally with silver recently. So looking at SLV, knocking on the door at 23, we have not been there in a while. So we are getting a little bit of a bid in the silver space. Now, in terms of the commodity land with where we're at right now, we still don't have necessarily a major rally or anything like that, like in crude or anything like that. Crude's back in the 70s, the mid 70s. I'm showing 74 right now. But I think that if we are starting to get buyers in silver, that might turn some attention to commodities, and maybe silver just kind of came to the party late. A lot of times people think that precious metals are an inflation hedge. Well, we had inflation theoretically, and how come silver didn't go up to 40? Well, maybe the silver buyers didn't believe it was going to happen. That could be a thing. So those are some things lighting up my tape today. The other thing, JP Morgan, that's up over 2% on the day. So the market still likes that. And the market still does not like Disney. Disney had that run earlier in the year, and it is not continuing. That's for sure. And then looking at Ford is actually down over 5% on the day. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they're going to be faring going into their earnings announcement, which is on the 27th. So a lot happening, but not a lot, or a lot of things that look like they're getting ready to happen in terms of technical analysis, in terms of earnings coming up. And if you want to count the Fed, but just not happening yet today.
As a longtime Disney pass holder and person, just came back from the Disney parks and will not be renewing my passes for next season. I could certainly see why the stock has taken a hit. One of the few good performing pieces of their portfolio are the parks at the end of the day, and they have definitely fallen off quite a bit out there. Look at the pieces they just had in the Journal, listeners, about how empty they are. That wasn't actually true. I was just down there. They weren't that empty, but there are other issues, which we can get into on the Disney Stockcast here on the network. You mentioned the Fed, Mr. Uncle Mike. As you were talking, I was just pulling up the Fed Watch numbers from our friends over there in CME land. Right now, for the meeting coming up in about 9 days, it's about 97% probability they're pricing in that they are going to raise 25 basis points. I think, as you point out, the more maybe questionable and interesting one is the September meeting, and they're pricing in 84% of it being, if they raise at this one, that would put it to that same level. So I guess that level, it would be keeping things unched as opposed to raising it again a quarter of a point. So I'm guessing that it looks like people are pricing in a bit of a tread water in September. I don't think we're looking at cuts anytime soon, Uncle Mike, unless you're seeing some data here. We did talk about that recently. In fact, we had that question of the week when it looks like briefly the Fed Watch was pricing in a cut a few months ago. It seems like saner heads prevailed there. We put it out to our audience. I'll have to see if our producers can dig up that poll for us. But we did do that just a couple months ago. Do you think we'll see some cuts this year? And I think our audience was overwhelmingly against that idea, which, hey, our audience, smart folks at the end of the day. They are the ultimate arbiters of all things. Mr. Rock Lobster, I won't bother asking you if you have any fun memories of 80s Transformers or 80s wrestling, or if you even saw the Transformers movie, because I don't think they have movie theaters out by you. So instead, what is catching your eye in the market, sir?
I've never seen one of the new Transformer movies, to be honest.
You are not missing much, trust me.
What's going on in the market? So, we're kind of, we thought there's going to be something going on with this Q rebalance. It doesn't seem to bother anybody yet. So it's been kind of, at least for right now, a tempest in the teapot, but like many things, it's nothing until it's something. So you got that. So I'm watching something for that. Interesting enough, price of cars coming down quite a bit. I think Ford had to cut prices on their vehicles like by 10 grand on their truck. When I saw that the cost of a Cadillac Escalade, one of those fully stocked, big Escalade things that your Uber driver picks you up in.
AKA the Sebastian Mobile. That's what he rolls around in, one of those things, doesn't he?
They're like $100,000.
They're ridiculous, yeah.
Like, who the heck is buying that? Like, is there a squeeze on the Uber driver? So, like, okay. And now, so some prices are coming apparently down on those. And I think that's why Ford is down. I saw GM down as well. So, I mean, those are the sort of some of the signs I personally, I like the old days when people would like prices would go up because there's more demand, when there's kind of like demand driven, not sort of monetarily driven. Because at some point, the U.S., when they roll over whatever debt they have to roll over, I mean, those interest payments are going to be apparently all this new spending, Inflation Reduction Act, all those great things, all done with deficit spending. So again, the money only comes from one place. Oh, two places now. Eventually to be paid back by the taxpayer. So I think the market has been ignoring all of that, but it wouldn't be the first time we've run deficits and somehow the economy grew. I think everybody's hoping the AI thing kind of gave everybody a little shot in the arm as far as being bullish goes. So I think, government spending different than the economy, which is different than the stock market. They're all, they all kind of exist in their own thing. And every once in a while, they sort of get together and make everybody unhappy. What I also noticed is some interesting pricing. So I just bought like a VIX. It's my monthly strangle purchase when things are in the money. And I'm just about to close my the last of my July strangles. Let's see. I don't think I filled my put yet, but it's getting there. So no, I might get a really good price for it. But my in the money. So last month I did the 1620 strangle, was like 225, and ended up getting. It looks like I'm gonna get about 350 for it in VIX. Never got more than $1 for the 20 calls for the cycle, which also tells you you're not getting much vol because you can't get more than $1 for the 20 calls in a month. Right now, so that was the 1620 last month for 225, 230. Now you can buy the August 15, 17 for 220. I just got filled in that. So basically, the way I look at it, the August 17 calls and VIX future, the August future is 1550. Those calls are $1.13. So I think from a relative price for the year, that is probably the cheapest price I have seen an option that far out of the money versus the future. With a full month to go, that is the cheapest I've seen. Now, I know VVIX isn't the cheapest, but I'm trying to find when I can remember that strike call being as cheap as that relative to where the future is $1.50 out of the money, and the call is only like $1.10. So, either we're in for a extended lower vol, which, hey, it could happen. We were surprised by Donald Trump being the single-digit president. Maybe Joe Biden can be the sub-12 president for the rest of his presidency. Who knows? But it's looking like that. Slowly but surely, it's looking like that. So those strangles are very inexpensive. So anyway, I would probably go as low as $2 on it. So I kind of wait in here during the week, and then I'll be done buying it by Wednesday, Thursday. So I mean, that's just a sign of like how low vol a vol is. And my saying to my students is the VIX puts pay most of the bills, and every once in the calls make you a lot of money. And that's kind of how I trade VIX. I've decided I don't try to get too cute with it. Although when there's when the curve starts to do interesting things, you have different types of trades. But just in this straight contango, I don't even try to get too complicated anymore. So it also makes a good portfolio hedge, if the market decides to do something. So, I mean, as of right now, we're waiting, and I think this is, all these stocks took off. None of them had growing earnings. Inflation, as much as everybody's like, they were saying prices are lower, that I don't think that was accurate coming out of the White House either. Prices are still higher than they were last year, higher than 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They're still higher. They're just not growing as fast as they were, which, by the way, is good. But they're still higher. Like, the grocery store, I don't see that grocery store bill going down either. So I think those are positives, but I think rates are going to keep going up. Again, that's just my opinion until there is a little bit more of a slowdown here, a little bit more of a price crush, and we just haven't seen that yet. So as far as earnings, I mean, like, I think we're going to be sitting here. We either get something happen out of this Q rebalance into the earnings, which could be an event. Don't know, but it looks like it could be. And then we have, like, the market has pumped these stocks up on looking for pretty fantastic earnings results. So the only thing I can guarantee on this next earnings cycle is that Google, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, and Amazon will all be saying AI at least 20 times during their earnings announcement.
I'm going to start saying it
That's
here.
my only guarantee.
Our show's generated by AI. Bam, there you go. 10x increase in value. I'm going to start calling you the Strangler as opposed to the Rock Lops. You have not met a strangle you do not like these days, sir. You're strangling everything.
Well, the thing is just you've got relatively low vol, and then in 4 days the stocks are up like 10%. Like it's the best, it's not always like this.
No. I would say I've been talking with you and to you about various strategies for quite a while now. I can't recall you ever being this giddy about strangles in the past. Yeah, I remember you liking the.
I haven't seen vol this low in 3 years.
That is true. That is obviously why. But it's just interesting that all of a sudden you are the Strangler.
Yes, and then until I'm not, and then because it won't be like until the trade goes away. But as of right now, I mean, you got a bull market. You got, I would say this inflation thing is a wild card considering. How strong stocks are this year. The fact that this inflation thing is still hanging on, and I would not say it's beaten. I think a lot of the problems that caused inflation, starting 2 years ago, you had the mandates, the Russian war, like all kinds of uncertainty, goofy policy, right? Those things are sort of going away, which is definitely helping. But you also we're left with interest rates at 5%. Now the Fed can cut rates pretty damn fast. I think the thing that you don't hear talked about in the mainstream media or anything like that is like the government has a spending problem. And I think the Fed is trying to adjust that without actually telling the government to stop spending money, which it's still like, I don't know what Powell has to do. He's got to kick him in the kneecaps. But one of the faster ways to get rates lower is the government has to stop spending so much money. They don't have it. So anyway, I don't know how long this will last. But
we have discussed this in the past.
So,
you throw the kerosene on the fire. That's how you put it out, sir.
Yeah,
that's what you do.
You just throw more gas on it.
Mr. Uncle Mike, going back to what we were talking about before really quickly, our keen-eared producers did find it for me. We took a poll of our audience. It was a flash poll. I think it was during one of them. Might have been during this show or during TWIFO. It was back in mid-May, so about 2 months ago. We asked our audience. At the time, FedWatch was showing a nearly 50% probability of a rate cut as early as July. Do you think that will actually happen? We said, yes, they're going to be a rate cut in July, so that would obviously be at the meeting coming up in about 10 days. Or no, that's insane. Which way do you think our audience went, sir, and by what percentage?
I'll say no, that's insane by 78%.
You're close, but you got to dial it up a bit. Our audience likes extremes. 93%
wow.
said no, that's insane. Only 7% said yes, there is a probability or they could see a path to a rate cut in July, sir. So our audience kind of fade in the rate cut. Again, this was 2 months ago, so data has changed a little bit, obviously, but still intriguing out there. Our audience not feeling the rate cut love out there. Are you feeling it, listeners? Are you feeling the Uncle Mike optimism that perhaps a rate cut could be in the offing sometime down the road, or at the very least a pause? That might be a good question of the week as well. Unfortunately, we already got not fortunately, we have a fun one out there right now. So fortunately, we already have a fun one. Maybe for next week. Actually, no, we'll be heading into the Fed this time next week, so it might be good fodder. Producers, take note for next week's question of the week. Do you think we'll see? Not forget about July. That's too close, but maybe the September meeting might be a good subject for question of the week. In terms of action, what's lighting it up out there right now, listeners, actually, it's a fairly decent day. Weirdly enough, VIX looking more robust than SPY right now. How many times have I told you, listeners, at this time of the show, you can almost set your watch by it. SPY is going to be at somewhere around 4.1, maybe 4.3, maybe even 4.5 million contracts. And SPY right now looking kind of weak, 3.4 million contracts right now. So SPY looking light. The ADV 7.5 million, so kind of hanging out there. But VIX closing in on 500,000 contracts already. VIX at 400 and actually just ticked up 487,000 contracts. It was at 470 and change just a few minutes ago. So VIX looking very robust, closing in in a few minutes should be at 500,000 contracts. The ADV 722, so that's going in the wrong direction. Seems like we're going to hit it today, though. The S also looking kind of light, 1.35 million contracts out there. The ADV 2.75 million. So again, it's right around halfway to its ADV, but we have seen it obviously looking more robust at this portion of the show. Small caps also looking kind of light, I should say, even though again they are over half of their somewhat lightened ADV. They're at about 540,000 contracts. Their ADV has now dipped below 1,952,000. So they seem like they're on pace to hit that. But again, we have seen small caps more robust by this portion of the show as well. And the Qs kind of doing their thing. 1.75 million contracts. The ADV about 3.1 million out there. So looking decent out there in Qs land. But VIX maybe the bit of the surprise. Let's just look really quickly what's lighting it up out there in VIX. Obviously, we'll do a deeper dive in this on Vol Views on Friday. Right now, there are 95,000 of the AUG 21s going up out there today, including, looks like paper buying 80,000 of those, 79,999. That's far and away the biggest trade we have today by about 7x. So that's clearly why we're looking so robust. I can always tell listeners when we're looking this juicy in VIX without a heck of a lot else going on, there's probably some interesting trades in the offing. AUG 21s for about 75 cents, listeners, about 80,000 times. You like those? I mean, some of the headlines over the weekend may be showing you that, hey, maybe there is a little bit more upside in the offing, or you could be believing that, we're going to be hanging out in these vol doldrums for a while, in which case this is 75 cents gone to die 80,000 times. It might be a good question of the week there as well. a lot of fun questions to pick your brains on, listeners. Let's get out to our top 10 most active and see what's cooking out there. Is it an active single name day? And the answer is kind of, yeah. I mean, it's not bad. It's about 279,000 is what it cost you to break into the top 10. So not quite 300K, but pretty darn close, within spitting distance of it. That gets you to our old friend, the artist formerly known as Facebook, now Meta. 309, pretty much even, kind of unched on the day. Looks like it's had a little bit more robust range. It got down as low as 304.75, and the high was 310.25. So actually did a fair amount of living, about $5.50 intraday, even though it's settling out kind of unched right now. So that would account for its paper out there today. Number 9, the aforementioned Diz coming under some heat today, off nearly $3, about 3.25% out there right now, trading right around 85.75. This one, unlike a Meta, really never really rallied today. It's been pretty much down the whole time, except for a brief blip around 11:30 where it rallied about 40 cents. Other than that, they've just been coming for it. I think this article in the Journal is kind of weighing on this. There's been a lot of other issues, a lot of pushback now against Iger with some of his comments he made recently regarding the strike. So a lot of things that are getting people and their ire turned towards Disney these days. Can they right the ship? They just increased Iger for a couple more years, so he'll have time to do something over there. It'll be interesting to see what they do cook up. Of course, on the parks front, which is the part I'm most familiar with, they do have some more competition coming their way. Universal opening brand new park in about a year and a half now, and Disney has nothing to counter it. So going to be interesting to see when all that happens, where some of those visitor dollars start going. The parks have been one of the few things that's kept Disney afloat in these troubled years when they had no movies. The sports were troubled, obviously, with no live for a while, and then everything else. So a lot of their other parts of their empire were not firing on all cylinders, but the parks were doing pretty well. If those come under some heat now, that'll be interesting. So Diz, yeah, we said 284,000 in the number 9 spot. Number 8, it's going to be in there today. Also the subject of our question of the week. We'll get to it a little bit. One of the subjects, I should say, of our question of the week. This is Rivian giving up the ghost today, off nearly $1, about 4%, trading $23.90. It's like they crushed it down as low as about 23.25. So it has rebounded off that low from the day. It got as high as about 24.60 today. So obviously off that high as well. So Rivian giving back some, good for 301,000 contracts and the number 8 spot. Number 7, the Amazonians, 333,000. By the way, Amazon, and was one other. It was Alphabet. The folks at Earnings Whispers were tweeting something out this morning, which kind of caught our eye, which is interesting. They're saying this is the first time in years they don't have confirmed earnings dates for Google and for Amazon. They said 76% of the rest of the S&P they do. This is very unusual for those two companies and maybe a sign that something is afoot for them. So I thought that was kind of interesting. They usually you have confirmed dates well in advance for a lot of these big names. For Alphabet and for Amazon right now, that is not the case. Weighing on Amazon right now, off about $1.33, trading $133 in about a third. So an interesting day for them. Again, good for about 333,000 contracts. Number 6, it's one of our people, popping hard today. This is Palantir, $17.50 right now, up about $1.12. So looking robust today. My goodness, this has always been kind of the cheaper alternative for those of you who are priced out of NVIDIA. Not as cheap as it was, but still looking better. 395,000 contracts today. Number 5, an interesting saga out here. AT&T, man, they've come for this one of late. New 52-week lows, $13.50. Hit it pretty much this morning. So this one kind of just falling out of bed. A lot of issues with them, and on top of that, some thoughts about liability with this whole new report about lead in their wires. So yeah, that could be a big liability hit for them. So this stock coming under fire today, off another buck, or about 6.5% today, trading right around $13.50. Good for 421,000 contracts out there, and the number 5 spot. Number 4, it's the chip zone, first half of it, 525 on the tape for AMD, trading 116 and about 2/3, up 70 cents. Number 3, right behind it, the other half of the chip zone. So chip zone coming fast and furious today. It's NVIDIA. Number 3, 608,000 contracts, up about $3.20. Trading 457, almost 458 out there right now. Number 2, it's the fruit company. You know the deal. 761,000 contracts. It's actually decent paper for Apple. We haven't seen them looking that robust in a little bit. They're up about 2 1/3, about 1.2%, trading 193 even right now. So a decent day for Apple. Looks like some love coming for them out of India, driving some Apple iPhone love. So intriguing stuff out there. And then your number 1 big dog, you know the deal by now, listeners. It's Tesla. They're coming under some fire from Elizabeth Warren. She's an interesting one, whether you love her or hate her out there, I suppose. But she is making some headlines out there talking about investigating Musk and Twitter and Tesla and all this stuff out there today. But the stock doesn't care. Shaking it off a little over $5, about 5.10, nearly 2% to the upside, trading 286.5 right now. Why is it popping? Because they actually built their first Cybertruck, this much ballyhooed thing that is probably one of the most infamous demo fails of all time. Yet, even though they shattered the window on this thing, thousands of people still put on a deposit. I don't understand that. They're marketing it as this Mad Max, super tough, bulletproof vehicle, and then they break the window, and everyone, I got to buy it. It's like, no, it just failed. But hey, people like this thing, and they're intrigued by it. It looks different, I'll give it that. And it looks like the fact that the first one rolling off the assembly line is enough to overcome some of the negative headlines. Let's look to some positive stuff maybe coming out. Hell, we're gassing on here. We got to get going here. Bank of America, Tesla this week, American Airlines, all sorts of fun. But we got to keep on rolling, listeners. It's that time. We had a lot of fun at the top of the show with 80s wrestling and Transformers. So let's keep on rolling right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block. Before we get into that, really quickly, we just received, hot off the presses, as I was speaking, new updated earnings season reports from our friends over there at ORAT. So let's get to them really quickly. Just the earnings season report. Obviously, the season is still young, listeners. Only 13 names reporting. But we're at a whopping 135% right now, so we're blowing the doors off. That's obviously going to come in. Speaking of coming in, listeners, our long-term average came in quite a bit after the last cycle, 83%. Now, that's dropped from about a 93. I'll have to talk to Matt to see if there's some adjusting. Maybe they dropped some data off the tail end of that as well, which also lowered it. Because we do have this running tally of about 3 years worth of data out there. But I do believe they might clip the beginning of that when they add a new cycle. So we'll have to go see, because that could also account for why we saw such a big change, because last cycle was still around 93%, so it shouldn't knock it this much. But intriguing stuff either way, interesting stuff to keep an eye on there. As we keep on rolling into the land of weirdness, listeners, I was just talking about our old friend AT&T. They're coming for it today, off about nearly a buck, $13.50. On the year, it's been mostly, as the Rock Lobster likes to say, a tale of sadness and woe. It was trading $21.50 a year ago. That was the high for the year. Then they crushed it down to its previous low for the year of $14.63 until today, when they just drove it to a new low. Then they rallied it again. They got it back up. That low came in October. They rallied it to about $20.50 in January. got almost to that level again, about $20 in April. And then that was all she wrote. It's been selling off pretty much ever since. It got to, on the 13th, it got to about $15 and change. Seemed like it was kind of hanging out there. And then, of course, more headlines breaking about it, which have not been great, and opening today at a new 52-week low of $13.50. But it seems like, Mr. Rock Lobster, maybe somebody coming in and saying, you know what, this sell-off is a wee bit overdone, because they scooped 9,807 of the July 14s. They paid 12 cents for these bad boys. Then they came back in, bought 7,222 more. Looks like that was a few seconds later. And then they kept going and kept going. A total of 37,000 had traded by the time we kicked off the show, Mr. Rock Lobster. The stock was a little bit higher, 1373, so they're wearing it a little bit on these. These are July, so they obviously only have this week, listeners, for something to kick into gear for these bad boys. So interesting, a very near-dated swing for the fences. There are no earnings in this. Earnings are next Wednesday, so they're not getting any earnings pop in this. So this seems like, I mean, it could be you're overriding the hell out of the stock and maybe you're buying some calls to hedge it, but I don't see any tide legs going up with this. And it'd be weird to just buy a weekly to hedge yourself on that. We've seen crazier things, but not the usual use case. So this looks like it might be what it seems to be, Mr. Rock Lobster, which is somebody just betting for a very aggressive pop through the 14 strike by Friday, sir. What say you in your old favorite name of telephone?
I guess, yes, we used to just say phone. You don't even, you just dispense with the tele.
Yeah, forget the tele even, just phone. That's how lazy just you guys
phone. Were. I guess this is why here's my question, right? Some CEOs are worth the money. Other CEOs are worth nothing. Because you basically have a franchise that's AT&T. I don't know what was the last jerkwadi AT&T CEO, right? Like, so you get this job and you have this franchise with like a jillion customers, and all you do is destroy shareholder value. Like, why are these guys paid anything? Like $100,000 a year until you actually make your stock price go up when you have a franchise. Like this AT&T CEO that did all this with Time Warner and this hugely expensive take, like, what a maroon. Really, I just don't, it's beyond me. Sorry, I got to get on my soapbox, but like ridiculously bad. So you have AT&T, and they had to cut the dividend in half already. So I want to believe that this franchise is worth some money, and because like everybody using a cell phone, so you got to think there's only 3 or 4 players, right? And cell coverage is pretty good. But this stock is at year lows when technology stocks are at year highs. So somehow AT&T, I don't even know are they a technology company? Are they just a repository for dumbassery? I don't know anymore. Anyway, so yeah, this person thinks this stock is going to pop. And, all I could say is on these calls, the price is right. You got a little time to go to expiration for this week. You got some earnings, although it's a little bold because they're looking for a pop after earnings. But the stock was just $16. It's now on 13.5. The S&P 500 is at highs of the year. Like, just as you like to say, make it make sense to me. I don't get AT&T at all, and Verizon is the same way. It's like, what are you guys doing? And I the only thing I can think of is just the competition is just so brutal. It's like becoming like the airlines. It's, although I think it seems like the airlines are bouncing a little bit, but it's just a really brutal environment to try to make money selling phone services. I mean, you look at this and you go, it's not I have 100 shares of Verizon left. I'm glad I got rid of my shares of AT&T, and the only thing I ever made out of it was the dividends, and I feel lucky at this point. I didn't have a ton of it, but it was enough to annoy me. And Verizon's after kind of getting back to my high water mark on it, it's definitely down like a bunch. So and at a 5% dividend a year, you'd think, wow, you'd make money. But I guess the person buying calls is looking like, hey, this is ridiculous. It's oversold and it's going to bounce. What's amazing about it is this stock was $16 a week ago. And the 14 calls for this week are 12 cents and you can buy all you want. So that's what do you say about that? You can have all you want for 12 cents of the 14 calls. Stock's trading $13.60. It's just I assume they're going to make money on these. We should bounce, but on Friday on Options Oddities, we'll see if they broke even on these things. So it'll be interesting to see.
We shall see indeed. It's no Vodafone, right? I mean, that's where the smart money goes for the upside. is the Vodafone. Who buys AT&T calls? It's crazy town. Let's keep on going. Let's go out to, we're coming up against this, so let's do this one quickly. EVGO. This is a newcomer to the network. This is, as the name implies, a DC fast charging network for EVs. Ticker symbol EVGO, trading $4.42, up 40 cents or about 10% today. So a nice pop for them. On the year, they're still down. They're down about 42%. They're trading nearly $8 a year ago. They got to their high in August of $12.65. And then since then, it was pretty much straight down to their low for the year back. Looks like mid to late June of around $3.50. Since then, they've rallied about $1, including about 40 cents today. So a nice pop for EVGO. And it seems like Mr. Rock Lobster. These are interesting. The July 4s. The July 4. Again, okay. The stock was 4 3/8 when this went up. They bought 5,000 of the July 4s for 50 cents. I had to do a double take on that for a second. Wait a minute, they got them for 50 cents, but the stock was a little bit lower. So 50 cents for these 5,000 times, just swinging for the upside fences. Again, these are July, Mr. Rock Lobster, so they're going away in a couple of days. But these ones are already looking pretty good. The stock's up about close to a dime, and they bought these calls for not quite parity, but pretty darn close. So what are your thoughts here, sir, on another swing for the near-term fences, this time in EVGO, sir?
Yeah, I think, you look at both these sets of calls and they're looking for a little rally into the end of the week and a continued pop. And I'm not the one to stand. I have no interest in standing in front of a market that's going crazy. But, the other thing is look at how inexpensive the calls are. I think for some funds, these are probably a pretty cheap shot. So Mark and I actually looked at these things today. As a potential for our Delta Strike product. So yeah, like this, I don't like the Nove 4s are $1 and the stock is $4.45. So, would Alex be upset about those? Probably a little bit, but you get 4 to 1, essentially a delta of the stock. That's not too bad leverage. But yeah, looking at these, yeah, it does definitely look like somebody's looking for some upside. And I think going into these earnings, people might get a little skittish on some of the big names. Who knows? But as of today, it looks like not, because they're just taking everything straight up. But yeah, it looks like just straight call buying, looking for some just hot action at the end of this week.
Hot action indeed. You know who's always good for some hot action is Uncle Mike. So let's get to him, a little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, regale us. You got about 8 or 9 minutes, sir, to detail for us your favorite Transformer and why. Go, sir.
All right. So in terms of the Transformers, it wasn't necessarily right up there with my pro wrestling love in the 80s, but I do remember coming when school was done. I think it was at 3:00. Transformers were on. 3:30. GI Joe was on. That was just an exciting afternoon for a third grader, from what I remember. But I'm definitely an Optimus Prime fan. But what I really liked about the Transformer cartoon show was just the cool sounds of the lasers. I mean, was that a neat sound or what?
I like the transforming sound, but you're right. There was some good Foley work in that show.
There was. It's true. Yeah, there was a neat transforming sound you had, too. But what I want to talk about today is, what if you have a covered call and it's gone up too much for you? So in other words, I'm just looking through our triple income portfolio, and we have some stocks go up, some stocks stay the same, some stocks go down, like any of them. But there are some stocks in there to where it has gone through our upside calls. And what I wanted to go through with it are what are the choices with which you actually have if that's the case? Well, the first one, of course, is that you can just let it get called away and then make up your mind at the end of the month once it gets called away, unless it gets called out early, of course. And that's fine. That's one choice with which you have. Another choice that you have is when you look at it and you're looking at the combination of the short call and the long stock, you can get out of it for a profit. Now, the time value in the short call is what's going to prevent you from getting to your ultimately full profit, but you can still get out early if you want to reduce the exposure. One of the things that we do when we're doing that strategy is that we pretend that we figure out what our credit's going to be, and we pretend that it was a short put. And let's say that we sold the short put for $1, we would get out of the short put for 20 cents if the stock went up. Now, on a covered call, let's say that you can buy the stock for $50. I'm sorry, buy the stock for $51 and you sell the 50 call for $2. Now, by doing that, that's the equivalent of selling a short put for $1. Well, one way with which we would get out of that trade to the way up would be we'd have a limit order out there sitting to get out of the combination stock and call at $49.80. That would be the equivalent of getting out of the short put at 20 cents, like I discussed. So once again, we look at what the short put equivalent would be if we are doing a covered call right away. And that's how we would determine when we wanted to get up. If it was going up, well, we already had the short call in place. Now, you might be asking me, well, Mike, why on earth are you telling me about this complicated thing? Why don't you just sell the darn put? Well, I'll tell you. We've talked about this on the show before. Right now, we live in an environment that has interest rates again. And because of that, calls are actually going to be priced more than puts. And so if you're not getting some type of a money market rate within your brokerage account on the money that's being held for the short put, which you likely aren't, you're likely getting like 25 basis points or something like that, then it is going to come out better to sell a covered call as an opening move as opposed to a short put. So if you XYZ stocks at 51 and you wanted to sell the 50 put, you're going to be better off buying the call and buying the stock and selling the 50 call simultaneously than you would be just selling the 50 put. And once again, the reason for that is because interest rates exist again. Now, that's not going to happen 100% of the time on every stock, but that is something that is going to be a lot more common now that ROE actually exists again. So with that, your other choice on it, if a stock is going too far too fast, you can kind of do something like what a wrestling coach would say. The question that I often bring up to people that understand wrestling, and I'm talking amateur wrestling, not professional, how do you get out of a double chicken wing? What's the best counter move to get out of a double chicken wing? And without question, the best move to get out of a double chicken wing is not get into it in the first place. And so if you're concerned about a stock going high and you still want to sell some premium on it, well, you can sell a call spread. Selling a call and then buying another call on top of it. So that way, if for some reason XYZ stock did go up to 80 in the 1 month or 1 week or 3 months, whatever your time frame was on your covered call, well, then you actually can go up with it. You'll just miss out on that difference between strikes minus your credit. So those are just some things to think about when a stock is going against you, but it's really going for you. It's just not happening in the way with which you want it if you are a frustrated covered call trader. And that is the strategy block for today.
All right, now it's time to keep on going around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on till the Thursday episode. Really quickly, our question of the week, I teased it at the top of the show. It's a fun one. We've been profiling a lot of weird paper on the network of late, both here and to a much greater degree, of course, on options oddities. We've got some head-scratching ones. We said, hey, we've seen a lot of quote-unquote interesting options paper lately. We can't decide which ones we like the most, or in parentheses, the least. Probably the latter for a lot of these. So we'll let you folks decide. Gun to your head, which would you rather buy? Gave you 3 choices and the infamous other. Nikola AUG 5 calls for 37 cents. Do you want to buy those? Or the Rivian AUG 40s, 4 O's, for 40 cents. or the Keurig Dr. Pepper October 33s for 55 cents. Mr. Rock Lobster, we just discussed all these on the Oddities show on Friday. So what is your vote if you have one? And then B, what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday show, sir?
Oh my gosh, I have to remember all those polls things you just asked about. I would say, for this week, KDP, I thought I was liking those KDP OC 33s. That would be the show. That would be the options I would rather. I mean, instead of just making up my own, believe that one was.
Those were the ones. Those were the most relevant. I mean, you're getting all the way out to October for 55 cents. The other ones are just literally scratchers, right? Lottery scratchers.
Yeah. So for this week, actually KDP is still on my list. We're also looking at SSYS. Just again, more paper in that one. I was going to throw that one to you for oddities. Somebody did the wackiest roll ever. But also, again, I'm looking at this rebalance and just this endless march of the Q up. I mean, you could say what you want. We got a supposed rebalance coming. Everybody's got to be expecting great earnings, but Q keeps going up. And we're only now 18 points away from 400. And as I recall, at some point at the beginning of the year, we're like at 280 or 260. So at least October of last year, I know we were. So AI is going to save the world. So we know that every CEO, I'm just waiting for Disney to start talking AI because I think they need something to help their stock price.
That's what's coming. By the way, Rivian running away with our poll right now, Mr. Rocklops. The OG 40s, our audience can't get enough of them for 40 cents. Exactly 2/3 of the audience choosing that. So we got a bunch of crazies in our audience. 23.8% choosing the Nikola OG 5s for 37 cents and 9.5% choosing what I thought was kind of the obvious choice, the Keurig Dr. Pepper OC 33s for 55 cents. But hey, that just went live right before showtime, so that's the early blush. We'll come back to it on Thursday, see how it's going. Mr. Uncle Mike, we're kind of up against it, sir. So what are you watching for the rest of the week, and where should folks go if they want to get more Uncle Mike in their lives?
Well, watching the S&P as always, and if you're interested in working with a financial advisor who knows what the heck a covered call is, reach out to me. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike TOSAW or check out my website, stcharleswealth.com.
Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you, sir. Where should folks go if they want more Rock Lobster in their lives?
Yes, 888-TRADE-01. Ask our customer care team. Any of my products you want to learn to trade options, learn what all this strangling is and why you want to be a strangler instead of a butterflyer some days other than not. Come to Option Pit. Learn how to trade options. That's what we do. We have been doing it for 12 years. Also, Option Pit just got an influx of students, so we have grown by like a zillion % in the last 2 weeks. So we are busy, and there's a reason. So pop on by. And again, if you're listening to this show, you get 10% off anything at Option Pit. Tell Ted or Andrew I said so.
Folks loving these Rivians, growing to 70% now want the Rivian OG 40s. So there you go. Rivian, getting some love. OptionPit.com, the place to go to get your own option love. We got to get on out of here. If you're listening live, we'll be back in a little bit with the crypto rundown. The folks from Deribit going to be joining me. That's exciting. We've been talking about Deribit volume on that show since its inception. So good to have them joining us to talk about it. Of course, the largest crypto derivatives exchange out there on the planet right now. So it should be some fun insight there. A lot cooking in the world of crypto. So stay tuned for that if you're on the pro side. If you're listening on demand, that'll be hitting the network later today after the option block. Back again throughout the rest of the week for our usual assortment of content. And then back again on Thursday, another episode of the option block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's MIXLR.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/The Options Insider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.